Just breathe. Very apt. Just don't sniff the air as you smell the desperation of the cabal ramping up. Oh my. This week I've watched a couple of videos. I don't watch many, I don't have the time. Where some clowns, paid or otherwise, challenge a guy for wearing a hat with MAGA on. And then you have another one, some young girl offering a blowjob to punch people with MAGA hats on. The two worlds comes right into view. One video is stating people are afraid of people with that hat on. Really. You should all now realise the power of the portal people. That's mainstream media newsreaders for those new. Why they brand things as something not based in reality to create whatever situation they desire. And sadly, certain sections of the stupid public always buy into it. Hate Trump, they cry, and people follow regardless whether they know the man or his stance. No, the portal people said hate him, so they follow like sheep. Hate or fear a hat? Really? I can understand if it was the protection force for the Democrat Party, formerly known as the KKK, then they might raise a fear with that hat. But it's a bloody baseball cap, and they're saying it creates fear? Dearie me, these people, have they even heard what they're saying? Thankfully, the Russians never came to this country, as half the population was literally shit themselves to death in fear if they're frightened of a hat. I've heard it all now. Call in the National Guard, let's have a curfew as someone in the town somewhere is wearing a MAGA hat. I'm terrified. Woo. And there are some people who think we should wait for these people to reach the higher vibration and transition. You'll have a long wait with those idiots frightened of the hat. Oh my. Frightened of a hat. Oh my. This world's going crazy. The cabal's going crazy. And oh dear. And we're trying to save these people. Oh well. This is the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Let's get into some the details of the show. And before we get into the usual bits, quite a volume of stuff to cover tonight. Op-ed pieces. There's a bit of intel, what we can put out. I'm going to be covering HR 205, is it? No. I'll remember it in a minute anyway. The Sovereignty Act, and I'm going to detail each section and what it actually entails, so it's not repeated verbatim and such. And we're going to out some people tonight. I think it's gone too far. Certain people who have acting in the wrong way, and so the two people will be outed tonight. Right, the link for the show is Spreaker.com/user/8955881. You can also listen live on the website thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. We have all the archives of the past shows, including the must-listen to shows. We have a section of Kim and the Man of World Holding Trust separate. Grounding, centering and shielding documents, which are important now. Even more important is the shielding. There's a lot of fun and games going on, as you will hear. And we've also got a search engine, so if you want to type in, for argument's sake, Man of World Holding Trust, everything that's been in the transcripts, which are available on my Patreon, it all comes up. So there's plenty of things you can search for on there, and hopefully it all comes up. You can also find us on Facebook, Truth, Honour and Integrity, and also MeWe.com, Also Truth, Honour and Integrity. And if you can't find it, I'll give you the email for that shortly. On the MeWe, we've now got the People's Club t-shirts, which has been brilliantly set up and done by Stephanie Arklich, one of our members. So if you want a t-shirt of the People's Club, go to MeWe and seek out Stephanie Arklich. Thank you for that. Right, we've got the People's Club donations where you can go and pay for the t-shirts. They're $15 plus postage, which is all going to the People's Club, not to my Patreon. And for those of you who want to contribute to my Patreon, and thanks to everyone who already does, it is patreon.com/TommyW/memberships. Every about a week after the show, we post the transcripts of those shows, of the intel and the op-ed pieces, not the Q&A and not the news items, unless the news items has some intel in it. Right. First things first, the information contained within this show is for the listeners' benefit. I've had to do this because some people seem to think it's fun to trash certain things, but there you go. So what you choose to do with that information is your choice, not mine. And I don't request emails telling me how great I am or how great the show is. And by the same token, I don't need emails telling me I'm a piece of shit, I talk out of my ass, or Kim and the trust is bogus. That's fine if you believe that. Don't let me stop you with your choices. In the same token, I don't need to know your choices either. Use your energy on the various RV, Blue Chicken or crypto sites if that's what you really believe in. It will be far more beneficial to you than wasting your time attempting to trash me. It doesn't work. We know your games and we laugh at your emails. I just never understood the concept of writing to another alt media to tell them that they're BS. What a waste of energy that is. It's just beyond a joke. I don't understand what drives these people. Maybe at the end of the day they're just bots, which is far more common than people think. Or sad life, or sad no life actually, agency trolls and chills, or maybe they're just Stockholm Syndrome, just fighting to protect the system that enslaves them. Who knows? Right, let's get into the news. US Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi my words or forecast that when she was appointed that she will become a liability, and it was a good appointment for we the people, will become more prevalent as the days go on. Anyway, she cancelled plans to visit American troops in Afghanistan due to claims the White House leaked her security plan. Oh my. The news comes one day after Mr. Trump banned the Democratic delegation, and seems to be a whole extension of Pelosi's family as well, from using military aircraft for the trip. Now, Mrs. Pelosi's spokesman said on Friday that security officials had determined that Mr. Trump's announcement had significantly increased the danger. Ooh. And the row raged on the 28th day of, when I put this in, of the US partial government shutdown. Pelosi's spokesman said that after Mr. Trump revoked the use of a military aircraft, multiple White House officials then leaked her plan to fly Democratic members of Congress on a commercial airline to Afghanistan. Yeah, that went out of Reagan Airport. In the middle of the night, the State Department's Diplomatic Security Service provided an updated threat assessment detailing that the President announcing this sensitive travel had significantly increased the danger to the delegation and to the troops' security, there's that word again, and other officials supporting the trip. Yeah, all cabal. And in light of the grave threats caused by the President's action, the delegations decided to postpone the trip so as not further endanger our troops. We'll have more on who our troops are. And security personnel, oh my. Plus all the other travellers on the flights. On a military plane. Really. That was written by the BBC. British Buggering Corporation, as it's more better known for obvious reasons. They wrote that BS as directed by the Blue Dragon-led MI5/6 and is pure spin machine rubbish. Security plan? Really? So it's okay for Pelosi to have security, but not the American people. Do the people understand that? That's essentially what she's telling you, that her security is vitally important and the American people can go and stuff themselves. That's what she's saying. Media people won't tell you that. We all know why. Visiting American troops, she says. Troops means they are a fighting machine. So why are so many protecting the poppy fields in Afghanistan? They're not troops, but actually drug pushers. That's the top and bottom line. So it's complete and utter lies anyway about visiting troops. The reality is she was getting orders, instructions from NATO, much like Mnuchin was going to do in Davos, Switzerland, to get more orders from the Rothschildians and the Chinese elders. These people are beyond stupid. Really. You think you can go afar and not be seen or heard. Message for you: we hear and see wherever you go. Oops. Remember that I said in a show a few months back, who will be able to afford luxury items when the system is collapsing? It's like the Ouroboros clown program, where they essentially just keep chewing and keep chewing and keep chewing until there's nothing left. That's essentially what's going on globally now. And I forecast one day they will see their own stupidity. Well, this week, electric car maker Tesla has said it will cut its workforce by 7% after the most challenging year in its history. And in an email to staff on the firm's website, Elon Musk said that growth had been strong, but he added it was difficult to make Teslas with their new and developing technology as cheap as conventional cars. In other words, the cars are too expensive for the people. And they couldn't see this 2, 3, 4 or even a decade ago. And he stated the firm's car was still too expensive for most people. Go figure. So Tesla employs more than 45,000 people and is indicating it will cut about 3,000 of that staff. And shares went 6% lower on Friday. And they're in trouble. At least 30 Palestinians have been wounded by live Israeli fire at the Great March of Return protest in Gaza this week. And the Palestinian Ministry of Health reports, including 2 members of the media and also 3 paramedics were injured. Gaza Health Ministry spokesman Dr. Kudra reports Israeli forces were targeting 3 ambulances, 2 of them for the Red Crescent, interesting name, and 1 for medical relief. One ambulance was reportedly hit by a tear gas canister which broke its windscreen. The Palestinians, who have been holding protests every Friday since the end of March, demanding the implementation of refugees' rights of return to the lands they lost during the establishment of the State of Israel, and to bring an end to the 11-year now blockade on Gaza. The anti-vaccine trend. This is a pat on the back for the alt media. They're not liking it. Has landed next to HIV and Ebola as a key global threat, according to the rogue World Health Organization. I'll have more on them later. And experts say vaccine hesitancy. So in other words, people who have been going out and warning of the dangers, which is now spilled over into the public, and a lot of people are just not taking them anymore, which is good. But according to their experts, the vaccine hesitancy risks reversing progress in fighting preventable diseases. Although various diseases can be prevented by vaccines, according to the World Health Organization, such as diphtheria and meningitis. In 2019, the organization included vaccine hesitancy among the other top 10 threats are HIV and AIDS, the global influenza pandemic, along with the spread of Ebola and dengue fever, as well as air pollution, lack of primary care, and non-communicable diseases like diabetes. Now, according to them, vaccination remains one of the most cost-effective, doesn't say what cost, effective, getting rid of them. Might be cost-effective to the cabal, it's not to we the people. And refusing vaccines directly threatens to cancel out the progress being made. And the WHO listed, World Health Organization listed complacency and lack of confidence among the key reasons of why people are rejecting vaccines. Big pat on the back for the alt media. That's how it works. You know, people are saying you can't take on the system. Well, there you are. We already have. Now they're writing pity posts and the usual threats of we're all going to die, just to try and get. They've lost the media war on the vaccines, and there's the World Health Organization admitting it. Ten UN so-called peacekeepers from Chad have been killed in an attack by suspected Islamist militants in northern Mali, according to the UN. There's a whole new story to that. Another 25 Chadian troops were injured when the gunmen stormed the UN camp in Agulhok early on Sunday. The attack was repelled, the UN says, and the UN mission in Mali was set up in 2013 to fight Islamist militias operating in the country. Really. Militants have regularly attacked the UN and Malian troops since then. Al-Qaeda North African branch, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, said it carried out the latest attack. Oh my. Large swathes of northern Mali were seized by jihadists in 2012 until they were pushed back in a French-led military operation the following year. More than 15,000 personnel, including civilians, were later deployed as part of the UN mission, MINUSMA, as it's called, but parts of the country are still out of the government's control. President Trump's political team and top Republican officials have reached a landmark agreement to reshape the party's fundraising apparatus and also close the financial gap that devastated them in the midterms. There's a massive imbalance on how the Republican and the Democrats collect fundraising. But with this deal, the Republicans hope to create a rival to Act Blue, the Democratic online fundraising behemoth that ploughed more than $70 million into the Democratic coffers into the 2018 campaign. The Republicans have no comparable centralized platform to cultivate small dollar donations. Now, since the election, officials, including White House senior advisor Jared Kushner, State Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy have privately insisted that the party needed to come up with an answer, and following weeks of closed-doors discussions, Republicans have agreed to create a new platform called Patriot Pass, which will be used to cultivate and process online donations. Talking about other people who take lots of donations, the elite financiers that are attending the Rothschilds-led Davos meeting in Switzerland are kind of worried about the 70% tax rate on earnings above $10 million a year, which is proposed by freshman Republican Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. No, representative, not Republican, sorry. She's a Democrat. It's scary, said Scott Minerd, Global Chief Investment Officer for the $265 billion Guggenheim Partners. And he said in an interview on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Switzerland, by the time we get to the presidential election, this is going to gain more momentum, he said. And he added he would probably be personally impacted by it. And I think that the likelihood of a 70% tax rate or something like that becomes policy is actually very real. To a man, the billionaires and millionaires attending Davos had misgivings about Ocasio-Cortez's proposal, no surprise there, which she made during a 60 Minutes interview this month. And a poll found that 59% of voters were in favour of the idea. Only 59%? Really? And even 45% of Republicans liked it. And the lawmaker has turned heads in Washington and on Wall Street with her left-wing economic rhetoric, whatever that means, despite only being sworn into office earlier this month. Ms. Cortez represents part of Queens and the Bronx and identifies as a democratic socialist. I mean, who needs to earn $10 million a year? It boggles my mind why you would need to earn that amount. You know, it's pure theft. Like I said before, for every millionaire, there's tens of thousands living in poverty. You know, you could knock the 0 off the 10 and still live a lavish lifestyle. Beyond lavish. It's just a joke. You're going to see more of this. I did hint at it in a previous show recently, the downgrading of the status of the EU. And this week the EU ambassador to America at the centre of a protocol kerfuffle with the Trump administration is now due to leave his post next month. The ambassador David O'Sullivan, who was a former Secretary General of the European Commission, will be replaced by Stavros Lambrinidis, who is a former Greek foreign minister who currently serves as the EU Special Representative for Human Rights. They don't do much, do they? And of course now transatlantic relations are at a low point amid rancorous disputes with Donald Trump and his administration over trade and other issues. And EU officials are struggling to understand a recent downgrade of O'Sullivan's status in Washington. I'll tell you the reason why. It's pure and simple. Because a lot of yous are in bed with the Dragon Groups and MI5-6 who are supporting them, and the Rothschilds. Pure and simple. Nice, simple, easy explanation. Drop all them and come and join us. Fairly simple solution as well. There was a report this week out of Veterans Today, and the FBI abduction, they called it, of Marsay Hashemi, whose real name is Melanie Franklin. And according to the Veterans Today article, they stated it's another milestone in the US turn to fascism. Really? Now, Miss or Mrs. Hashemi is a well-recognised and highly respected journalist. That's a misnomer in and of itself. Journalist. And a TV anchorwoman for Press TV, which is affiliated with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now, she was abducted, according to them, on January the 15th. She was arrested as she was boarding a flight to Denver from St. Louis, and she was whisked to an unknown location in the vicinity of Washington, D.C., and the Washington, D.C. area was probably chosen as Northern Virginia is the site of what is referred to as the CIA court, in which so-called national security cases are heard, and because the government can be assured of government-friendly juries, according to this report anyway. In such cases, juries side with the government 99% of the time, except it's not the government. Veterans Today works for one, possibly two factions. So you will get exposures of the other factions, depending on which writer does a certain piece. But it's largely done to deflect from their faction of operation. And their complaints is that she was not being looked after in the right way, which is fair enough. She has no person access and protocols not being adhered to. Now, for the record, I personally do not approve of the incarceration of anyone without due process. It is far too open to abuse, and it was designed that way. But you have to ask, what is the difference about this woman? The rules and treatments stated in the report was also there under the last administration, and the previous one, and the one before that. So why weren't Veterans Today not complaining of human rights back then? Why no complaints against the people held in Guantanamo, most of which were on bogus charges? That's why they all got released. Perhaps this woman worked for Obama and the Muslim Brotherhood, CIA 3. And since that report, she's now been released. Last news item, where we go into some Q&A, is the latest BS to stick on Trump. The levels of childishness and desperation is beyond belief now. It's bordering on total insanity. So what has he been accused of now? Well, he's been accused of sharing doctored images in which his physical condition has been visibly enhanced. And this comes from the mainstream media. You know, those people are about as fake as an RV currency revaluation. Anyway, according to them, a number of pictures first identified by the website Gizmodo appears to show that the president's looking slimmer and neater than the original version. Really. And social media users were quick to point out the possible tweaks to his image, which was shared on Trump's official Instagram and Facebook accounts. The original version, which was posted on the White House Flickr page, appears to have a few key differences. And so Mr. Trump doctors his image to make himself look slimmer. Oh my. Such a crime. I think he should be impeached for doing something like that. But it's funny, these same people never queried how a so-called gravely ill Hillary can look 15 years younger and 30 pounds lighter within one day of her let's stumble into the van routine back in September 2016. Didn't question that, did they? Or the fact that Pelosi has a plethora of facelifts to hide the reptilian look she has. They don't question that. Portal people getting pretty desperate now, folks. Real desperate, you have to say. I think they'd have far better things to report on. Obviously not. Right, let's get into some Q&A. How did the universe get so dark? 87%. Has this percentage decreased? Yes, it has. That's why you're all still here. The theory is, and it's looking more like fact, is this source here was a bit naive, and it was created a light only universe. That is, dark only universe, but this was created as a light one. And so the occupants of that universe were unable to perceive dark, and it proliferated like a virus, which is known as the fractal virus, and it kept escalating and escalating, and it was only when it reached a point of no return that they recognised it was a major problem. Now, as I understand it, back then, many years ago, they were talking about pulling this whole universe, destroying it. And the reason being is this universe is connected to a universal tree, and this is one branch of it. So if you get infection in one branch, it affects the whole tree. And some thought this universe could be rescued. Those people went against Council's decision, as I understand it, and were correct to do so, as it turns out, because the dark percentage has gone right down. We're not that far off balance now, which is nearer the 45-55. There's still some dark to clear up, but the real dark has been dealt with. Is all of AI gone? No. The main AI system, the psychotic one, is gone, but there's many versions of AI, but not a planetary version 1, as I understand it. Where are we next? Can an AI system be used for good? Well, yeah, it depends on the programmer. But my belief is, once the people and beings on and in this planet have reached a certain level of vibration and frequency, and also recognised who and what they are and what they're capable of, the idea of needing a machine to run this planet will seem absurd. I'm not in favour of it. It does have beneficial effects, but the danger is who controls it. And given there was far more dark than light, the chances are it was always going to be controlled by the dark. But ultimately, a bit like the money system, we can progress to a certain level where we don't require money to live and exist, and we can also progress to a level where we do not require AI either. And despite what some of the clowns in the alt media and otherwise in the scientific community tell you, they cannot be sentient. They don't have our, no matter how big they make it, they don't have our own compatible, their systems are not compatible to our own computer system called our brain. No matter how much they tell you, it's BS. Right, that was a couple of more. Let me see. I'm going through the 43 questions emails and see if I can answer a couple of more. Maybe not. Let's go on to some more. America's become the prison capital of the world. We, as you know, incarcerate more people per capita than any other country, and most are victimless crimes, which is correct. You know, under common or natural law, those people wouldn't be in there. You know, people who take drugs, unless they've committed a crime against somebody else, they are just smoking it themselves and they haven't stolen it off anybody, then that's their own fault, you know, but they certainly shouldn't be in prison for it. And the questioner says, it's my belief they are doing this because of the criminal courts are all based on trust law, and this needs to stop. No, they're doing it because it's a collection agency. All courts operating under bar are not there for justice. They're a collection agency, and the judges are only, they get a proportion of the fines, and everyone gets the little piece out of it, including lawyers. And that's why they're fighting tooth and nail to stop natural and common law, because suddenly thousands of so-called crimes would disappear. That's what they're doing. It's a collection agency. Do you have any new intel now that America is sovereign? We're not sovereign yet. That has to go through due process. There are conditions where it can be dealt with automatically, but it appears at this moment they're not willing to do that, or reluctant, shall I say, but we'll see. And maybe this will change our policy of putting people in prison in a way to generate commerce. Yes, it would. Sovereignty means we don't need, we will actually be free of the Rothschilds-led crown and the bar. Was watching a show, and the topic was shadow people, devils and demons. The Pope now recognises exorcism. So based on the truth that we are aware, what is the true role of a priest in exorcism? Essentially, if you have that ability to remove the non-corporeal form, jinns, that's essentially what they are. You can call them devils and demons, but the real term is jinns. You extract them if you have that ability to do so. Sadly, there's not enough people around the world able to do that, and there's many billions of people who have attachments with jinns. We would like more people removing them. Of course, if people develop their own skills, you know, people often say, what can I do? Well, develop that skill. Remove these jinns and shadow beings from people. But beware, it takes a lot of energy out of you. A lot of energy. And you must also prevent it transferring from the victim to the healer as well. So you have to be very careful. What is the plan for California? At the moment, it's to tip everyone who are not elite out of it. That's been ongoing for 5 years now. The government and the people working in the Capitol building are so corrupt, absolutely. They make big talks and big lies. Yeah, and unfortunately the people in California fall for it, which is why they voted in Pelosi and Feinstein of all people. You know? And you're right in saying they really don't care about the citizens. Not many politicians do. That's the nature of the beast. They pass bills behind closed doors without citizens' vote or approval, and they only care about their pockets, and they lie a lot, absolutely. Taxpayers in California need help from these liars. They need to be investigated. Well, the people of California need to get together and throw the lot of them out. It's that simple. You know, you had your opportunity in the midterm elections. California voted in Pelosi. Really. A 78-year-old complete insanity woman. Anything she ever says coherent or make any sense? And yet the people voted for her. And Feinstein. And before that, Arnold Schwarzenegger. What use is he? The people have to get together. Of course, we've got members in California, some of which who are operating on a local level, which we covered in a show just before Christmas, who are fighting back, but they're still talking about the same people voting in Democrats. Trump's not a Republican, just in case you think I'm Republican, because I'm neither. To make that clear, we should have no parties and people doing a job they're paid to do, which is look after and for we the people. Not parties, not left, right and all that nonsense rhetoric, and liberal, conservative. It's all drivel. Are you able to look after the American people, for and by them? That's it. No labels, no nothing. I wonder, relative to the drain of America's tax revenue having been stopped and recovered by the trust, might the trust permit President Trump to offer American taxpayers 100% 2018 tax holiday for the 2019 season? Well, the bill's already in, and due process has started where there'll be a permanent tax holiday. But the IRS and those clowns know we're onto them now. The idea would be to offer a 100% refund to all individual 2018 taxpayers who had payroll withholdings. And you might decide to include self-employed individuals who are required to make estimated tax payments and permit the taxpayer to choose a simplified get it all back claim option or normal filing option. That won't be implemented this year. It may be something that will be considered next year. We'll see how quickly that bill passes through or what stumbling blocks come up. But just to make it clear, the trust doesn't have all the tax revenue money. What we did is the money that was funneled out of the IRS to the Rothschilds Bank in Switzerland last year. The trust swiped that money. It's the only one capable, so it's locked in the trust now. But the tax revenues for this year will still be going to the IRS unless they funnel that money out to Rothschild's banks again, and then the trust will step in again and take it back again. But we don't have the actual tax revenues. The media keeps talking about the cost of government closures, but I wonder if the so-called costs are not actually savings that could be shared with the people if a way to do it could be figured out. Well, essentially that's what's taken place in some aspects. You know, the government is massively over bloated, and one thing you can do is observe who is useful and who is not during a government shutdown. Has anyone other than the people who have been furloughed been impacted? If we weren't told by the media or Trump that the government shut down, would we know any different? Not particularly. And there's lots of things being processed and due diligence being done on a variety of things to do with the government and its wider field, and maybe we'll see what happens with that. Is practicing Reiki safe? I'm not too sure that the symbols are part of the old program and it's a genuine healing modality. I've done a few courses, 1 and 2. Does it contribute to Loosh, and how do I protect the space? Well, anything that involves healing, there's a cause and effect. If you're pulling out negative energies or negative thought forms out of a patient as such, then you have to protect yourself in a way that's not being, it's like the exorcism, it's not being transferred back into you. So you have to have a lot of awareness of your own field to be able to do that. Otherwise you're getting yourself into an awful lot of trouble. And this is what's happened to a number of these so-called shamans, is they're thinking they can do this, that and the other based on a book. You don't do that by a book. You either are in control of your PSI field or you're not. If you don't know what it means you don't have the knowledge. You essentially are, I could say, you are either pulling negative frequencies out or pulling entities out. And so by doing that, you have to make sure that you're releasing them into the ether and not into the vessel, your vessel. And this is why these people have to be a lot more careful, because in essence you're transmuting and sending your energy field to clear that entity, which then goes into the host. And this is why you can't be doing this like 9 to 5, day after day, day after day. You have to rebuild up your own energy, otherwise you'll spend it all and you will die. You can't do healing 24 hours a day. You can't do it 8 hours a day either. It literally drains your energy. And so the people who practice this, and if they're genuinely healing people, would know this. If they're not, then they're not really fulfilling what they said they're doing. So yes, it can be safe, but the people who are doing it have to have a lot more knowledge than is contained in a book, in my opinion. I'm on disability, and I barely make it from 1 month to the next with what the government gives me. And my question is, will Social Security amounts change anytime soon? Well, I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, that they have just received an increase. It's probably not enough, we know that. I would suggest, because the tax reform is being looked at and a few other things are being looked at, maybe there's a possibility that the Social Security Fund will be looked at also at a future date. I'm not promising it, but given the Social Security funding comes out of the trust and always has done, maybe we really need to look into why this Social Security fund that the people are paying out of their wages really exists. In my opinion, like the national security in the EU, it's another slush fund. So maybe in the future, when time allows, Trump may ask the team to look at that as well. What's your take on the Brundtland report? I have not read it, I'm sorry. Since it came from the UN's environmental community, do you think that they should oppose it? I'll have to have a look at it. Maybe I can answer that question better next week. How is the recently signed Global Peace Treaty handling those not in compliance? They, like Marduk, are being removed. Now, where people get mixed up is they think because Pelosi's cabal or Kissinger or Bush's cabal that the UPU or the council should be removing them people. That's not how it works. You know, it's other species against humans, not human versus human problem. Now, it has been addressed to the council that the problem with the clowns should be looked at in a different light, given whilst it's a human versus human problem, the problem is these global elites are running an off-world program, in my opinion. And I have asked 3 times for them to look at that and maybe address it and provide some help. So it's, you know, us fighting against politicians or us fighting against the military or Langley or whatever is a human to human issue that we have to overcome and resolve. Otherwise we end up being parented again, and we've had enough of that nonsense. And we have made giant strides, there's no question of that. When will the 99% be brought up to speed on this treaty? I have no idea. And who all signed it, for bloody sake? I don't know why that was worded that way. The ones that signed it are the ancestors of the ones who originally signed it. So all the tribal people that were around then and their ancestors now signed off on it, along with some others in the trust team. Are you thinking to make a film about the chart to explain it? We were hoping to do a show and explain the chart being the global martial law complete control structure that Randy put out and did a little piece on this week. And so we're hoping to do a video with Kim and I where people can actually see the chart. There's only one, that's the only one that's available, and then we can go through the various sections of what it is. Me personally, I want to focus on the bottom 25%, because that's essentially even the most knowledgeable researchers has gone that high. The other 75% people have no idea, apart from regular THI listeners. Will the chart be made public? It did. We post pictures of it. I admit it's not clear, but it's not easy. That piece of paper is around 5 to 6 foot and about 2.5 foot wide, so it's not easy to zoom in on and get the whole document. We wanted to show the whole document, but at a later date we may take pictures of sections of it and stitch it together so people may have a chance to see the finer details. Is it available? No. Kim's got the only copy, and I had the chance to study it for a while late last year, and we completed the who's who on it between Kim and I, and also Shane. Are there still 20 and back programs going on? There was no 20 and back programs going on originally. That's BS, I'm sorry. All of it. Whether they believe they went on it is another matter. There is certain holodeck rooms where they believe they are going to certain places when actually they're not. You got to understand the technology that we all think is the future is way in the past. Way in the past. But they've had clones for at least 50, if not 60 years. So, as Shane said in one of the shows, why would they need humans who have difficulty in space travel, particularly going in the tin cans that we go in now, when they can use clones? You know, clones, you don't need vast volumes of water. You know, the sheer weight of carrying water for a Mars journey is limiting to a point with the current technology that they have, or they're prepared to release. There are far better methods of travel than tin cans. I can tell you that for nothing. Any updates what's going on in the Mars colony? No idea. From what I gather, those clowns that are up there took a massive hit back in 14 and 15. I don't think they're playing too well anymore. What are we doing for time? I'll answer that later. Why can't the Men of World Holding Trust pay salaries? That's in a piece later. Can Kim protect GoFundMe accounts? No. I've discovered that Brian Colford, who started Build the Wall account, has switched to a new charity and has Eric Prince on board. Oh my, that's the end of that money. Mr. Prince is part of, well, he's the founder of Blackwater and his mercenary, and he's not a friend to this country at all. Is a copy of the peace treaty Kim and the council worked out readily available to read somewhere, or will that be made available in the near future? The peace treaty the original deal was signed on a kangaroo skin, because it was 16,500 years ago. As for the, I haven't seen the documents of the actual peace treaty. It's being held by the tribal people at the moment, and there was supposed to be a ceremony to officially record the end of that martial law, but until Kim and I can travel, because we will be integral to that official signing off. It's already signed over, but the tribal people like to do their ceremonies with the main people involved, and Kim and I will be part of that ceremony. You know, what we were looking at is maybe it being filmed globally, because it is important. But obviously certain restrictions and more of the cabal have to go down before that. And now we were supposed to go fly to a certain region to complete the ceremony, in August of 2016, but the cabal said the minute we get in the air they'll blow us out of the sky. So that's why we haven't had the ceremony as yet. What's your take on solfeggio frequencies? They work for me initially when I was doing meditation. Some frequencies are better than others. If it doesn't feel good to you, don't use it. Just because it says solfeggio, there are different frequencies that are good for some people and not for others. You know, some people it can sound all very pleasant and blissful, and some people it's like scratching your nails down a chalkboard. If it doesn't sound right, turn it off and find a frequency and a tune that does fit you. Ultimately, you can then progress from the solfeggio frequencies to go into meditation mode and do it without the music. And then you can progress again and snap into meditation mode, whether you're awake or asleep, or, well, not fully asleep, part asleep and part awake, or fully awake. You can go into the same mode of operation with your eyes and carry on with your work in life or whatever you're doing and still be in meditation mode. So it's like a stages effect. Some say it's related to Nikola Tesla's work, and others say it's related to MK Ultra. Well, like I said, if that tune doesn't feel good, turn it off. It's the best guide. Any ideas why there's an increase in vitiligo around the world? No idea. Sorry. What happened to the elders? Well, some of them decided to up sticks and leave. I think Shane said there was, but Shane was is in contact with the elders. One of them was his mentor at one point, but some of them, I think the last time I checked, there was 7 of the 11 left. Whether that's gone down further, I don't know. The SSP has been up to some dastardly deeds lately and for decades. However, there have been thousands that have served with distinction, especially in Solar Warden. What's your take on them and the memory wipes they all received? In my opinion, none of the SSP has done anything useful for humanity. They were a breakaway group. They were involved with the Aldebrans. They also held hostage, and still do to this day, the Thule girls for pointers. And it was them that was involved in the California fires, and it was them that was involved in the earthquake in Alaska. And there is no evidence whatsoever that there's another SSP, which for someone to ask that question, it means Secret Space Program, has ever done anything beneficial to humanity. Neither Solar Warden, which is a name that's popped up in the last decade, generally associated with Cobra. There's no evidence of that name being valid, in my opinion. What is the news on EMPCO, electromagnetic plasma changeover event? Have you heard about this, and is it real? Well, it's probably the latest fear porn. We're all going to die. Nibiru doesn't work anymore, and ignore it. There is technology to prevent all kinds of catastrophes, no matter which one. Given this planet is heavily protected now and is beneficial for humans' habitation, then I don't think they'll be allowing certain plasma events, rogue stars, brown dwarfs, or other solar systems coming in. You got to remember, each solar system has a drive engine. So if there's something incoming, which you'll see much time ahead, you can move it. Let's have a music break. I think we've gone far enough on questions, and I'm going to come back, and we're going to get into the new bill that's gone in, and also the Intel. So let's have this song. Hi all, and welcome back. The last question, I feel I need to say a bit more. There's a lot of people around the world who have become in tune with their higher self and their spirit and the astral travel, and they're involved in various missions as such. And the problem I have is some of the names that are being pushed forward. It's not anything to do with your own abilities or what you're doing. It's the names you're being affiliated with. And of course, Solar Warden is the new one. Before that, we had the Galactic Federation of Liars, as we called it, the Galactic Federation of Planets, the Silver Legion, and a few others. And none of them are recognised as existing. And this is part of the problem. You're being lumped in with labels, I'm part of this, when you're already part of it as yourself. No one can deny you your experiences, but you have to be careful who you're affiliating with. SSP became a meme by Corey Goode, and then suddenly people thought they were all part of the space mission of the SSP. No. What they're doing is sidelining you into a rogue program. So the people who think they're in Solar Warden, you're not. You have to be very, very careful. You know, I was offered the position of the commander of the Silver Legion back in 2014, and I turned around and said no, because it's BS. Once I learnt enough. Now, is that it, then turning around and saying that people like Tanath and Sunfire and a number of others who were part of the so-called Silver Legion are all BS? No, just the name. All of those people had abilities to go and do certain things, and I observed them, but there was no real Silver Legion club. It's just a label, which is then in essence almost like a religion, where you're transferring your own energy into a name, the Silver Legion, when really it's your own energy needs to carry on being used for the mission work that you're doing. The label siphons it off. So I hope that makes things a little bit clear. Right. Fresh from the bill that the Kim and I and the trust team worked on for around 4 months, all told, of the tax system reform. We also have been working on at various stages the Sovereignty Act. Now, some people have said these two bills plus the tax bill have been put in previous, and yes, it has. But what is different this time is there is funding to support those bills, and the input from the trust that goes way beyond the previous bills. People need to understand that. Now, below is the text of HR 204, And this plays into the sovereignty letter that Kim delivered to Mr. Trump directly, not Kim herself, she can't travel. That was dated January the 27th, 2018, and declared by Kim and the Trust America sovereign, as Kim is the master sovereign on the planet. That's how it works. The trustee, which everyone in THI knows was Marduk, had the ability to declare sovereignty and also take it away, and so does Kim. Now the difference is with Kim is that all other sovereigns were sub-sovereigns below the trustee. Kim's given each country sovereignty first, that is equal to Kim's level, not sub and below. So the power is then shared, and the countries have to become sovereign first before the people. If you start declaring people sovereign, some of them with egos the size of Wilcox will go right to the head and declare that they're the master sovereign and they own the whole country. A bit like some of the royals. So that's why sovereignty to the country first, and then once all that is achieved to the 209 countries, then the next stage is sovereignty for the people. Now, this is something else that I'm sure you've already started making viral, like the tax reform that's really flying around the internet now. And I think people who are new to the show will now start to realise that things that we've stated in the shows in the past are now starting to make the public, and American sovereignty being one of them. Now, Section 1, short title, this act may be cited as American Sovereignty Restoration Act of 2019. Section 2, the repeal of the United Nations Participation Act of 1945. Section A, repeal the United States Participation Act of 1945 under Public Law 79 through 264, 22 USC 287 is repealed. B, termination of membership in the United Nations, and the President shall terminate all membership by the United States in the United Nations. It's not America that's in it, it's the United States. And in any organ, organisation, specialised agency, commission or other formally affiliated body of the United Nations. C, closure of the United States mission to the United Nations. And the United States mission to the United Nations is closed. Any remaining functions of such office shall not be carried out. Now, the gist of this is the split from the United States agreement. Like I said, we are not the United States. Is a stage 1 effort. More stages to that will be delivered after we step out of that agreement. Section 3, repeal of United Nations Headquarters Agreement Act. Subsection A, repeal the United Nations Headquarters Agreement Act, Public Law 80 through 357 is repealed. B, withdrawal. The United States withdraws from the agreement between the United States of America, different title, and the United Nations regarding the headquarters of the United Nations, signed at Lake Success, New York on June the 26th, 1947, which was brought into effect by the United Nations Headquarters Agreement Act. What this signifies is a potential closure altogether and a removal of the UN headquarters in New York and off our soil completely. Section 4, United States assessed and voluntary contributions to the United Nations. No funds are authorised to be appropriated or otherwise made available or assessed for voluntary contributions of the United States to the United Nations or any organisation, specialised agency, commission or other formally affiliated body of the United Nations, except that funds may be appropriated to facilitate termination of United States membership and withdrawal of the United States personnel and equipment in accordance with sections 2 and 3 respectively. Upon termination of United States membership, no payments shall be made to the United Nations or any organisation, specialised agency, commission or other formally affiliated body of the United Nations out of any funds appropriated prior to such termination or out of any other funds available for such purposes. So what essentially this means is all funds, slush funds or otherwise, will be removed. This will include UNESCO, the IMF and also the World Bank, because though those three are all affiliated with the UN. So no more stealing by the IMF or the World Bank like they've done many times. Yes, you, Miss Hudis. Section 5, United States peacekeeping operations. Oh my. Section A, termination. No funds are authorised to be appropriated or otherwise made available for any United States contribution to any United Nations military or peacekeeping operation or force. Section B, terminations of United States participation in United Nations peacekeeping operations. No funds may be obligated or expended to support the participation of any member of the armed forces of the United States as part of any United Nations military or peacekeeping operation or force. No member of the armed forces of the United States may serve under the command of the United Nations. So essentially, all our military will no longer work for the United Nations ever again. Big step. Remember, Rothschilds controlled the UN. They still think they do, but it's illusion. So this will be a big move for the military. They will no longer take part in so-called UN peacekeeping. The UN has no peacekeepers. They never did. All those so-called peacekeepers are only mercenaries that have raped, pillaged and committed genocide in various countries around the world, particularly in Africa. And this would end this country's contribution to that. Section 6, withdrawal of United Nations presence in facilities of the government of the United States and repeal of diplomatic immunity. Section A, withdrawal from all United States government property. The United Nations, including any organisation, specialised agency, commission or other formally affiliated body of the United Nations, may not occupy or use any property or facility of the United States government. In other words, you're being thrown off our soil altogether. B, diplomatic immunity. No officer or employee of the United Nations or their affiliated bodies, or any representative, officer or employee of any mission to the United Nations of any foreign government shall be entitled to enjoy the privileges and immunities of the Vienna Convention. For those who don't know, Vienna is where the United States was formed. The original United States of Europe, not America. Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations of April 18, 1961. Nor may any such privileges and immunities be extended to any such individual. the privileges, exemptions and immunities provided for in the International Organisations Immunities Act of December 29, 1945, or in any agreement or treaty which the UN are not allowed to partake in anymore because Kim deleted their sovereignty, to which the United States is a party, including the agreement entitled Agreement between the United Nations and the United States of America regarding the headquarters of the United Nations, which was signed on June 26, 1947, and also the Convention of Privileges and Immunities of the United Nations entered into force with respect to the United States on April 29, 1970. Also shall not apply to the United Nations or any of their affiliated bodies, and that includes ambassadors as well. It removes all UN officers off our soil, all their ambassadors, all their employees within America, and it also removes their immunity to the law that they currently hold. That's Section 6. Section 7. Repeal of the United States membership and participation in the United Nations educational, that's a laugh, scientific and cultural organisation, in other words, branding companies. I'll explain more about that later. The joint resolution entitled a joint resolution providing for membership and participation by the United States in the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organisation and authorising any appropriation therefore, which was approved in July of 1946. And that would be repealed. And in essence, the gist of this section is it removes us from the dodgy black budget research programs, educational and scientific, and also the propaganda programs, cultural organisation, which is implemented via the UN. Section 8. Repeal of United Nations Environment Programme Participation Act of 1973. The United States Environment Programme Participation Act of 1973 would be repealed. Think the Paris Climate Accord, not a treaty, because the UN can't sign treaties anymore, which is why the name was changed, or other fake climate change programs. This would end America's participation in that BS. Section 9. Repeal of the United States participation in the World Health Organization. The joint resolution providing for membership and participation by the United States in the World Health Organization and authorizing an appropriation therefore, which was approved in June the 14th, 1948, would be repealed. And the gist of this ends our participation of global genocide. The World Health Organization is a misnomer. It is they, with their black budget research programs from Section 7, who created most, if not all, known diseases on the planet, including specific genetic diseases, and then forced vaccines and pharmaceuticals of death on people globally. Ebola, AIDS, etc., H1N1, Spanish flu, all came from the World Health Organization. And yes, I know that Spanish flu was before this signed off, or this organization came to the public eye, so to speak, but it's the same people. Eugenics, that's where they come from, World Health Organization. So this would end America's participation with the World Health Organization and our funding of it. Section 10. Repeal of involvement in United Nations conventions and agreements. Effective on the date of enactment of this Act, the the United States will end any participation in any conventions and agreements with the United Nations and any organisation, specialised agencies, commissions or other formally affiliated bodies of the United Nations. Any remaining functions of such conventions and agreements shall not be carried out. So all these commission reports and studies and all that, we will no longer take part in any of them, including the yearly United Nations Convention, where a group of people talk bollocks and achieve nothing, essentially, and that's about it. Section 11. Re-employment with United States government after service with an international organisation. Nothing in this Act shall be construed to affect the rights of employees under subchapter the 4th of Chapter 35 of Title 5 United States Code relating to re-employment after service with an international organisation. That means certain US ambassadors working under the UN can be transferred to the government, American government, and not be hindered. So, notification. Effective on the date of enactment of this Act, the Secretary of State shall notify the United Nations and any organisation, specialised agencies, commissions or other formally affiliated bodies of the United Nations of the provision of this Act. And Section 13, effective date, except as otherwise provided, this Act and the amendments made by this Act shall take effect on the date that is 2 years after the date of the enactment of this Act. That's how long it takes to the wheels of bureaucracy. Now, people will say, well, 2 years is a long time. Well, it goes over rather quickly. This show's been going nearly 3 years now. We're heading 2 3/4 years, and that's kind of flown over. There's a lot of details that need to be worked out. It's the cause and effect. You have to remove the obstacles in your way, of which there are several obstacles in just removing the UN. You have to go through this treaty and this agreement and cancel this and cancel that, and it does take time, and I appreciate most people don't like the time it takes, but you have to understand the depth of what is going on here. You literally have no idea. It's not a case of just sign this piece of paper or get rid of this group or get rid of that group. The rabbit holes go far deeper than anyone realises, and then you don't realise there's a load of tentacles that go off the rabbit holes that were beyond comprehension. But we have made extraordinary strides, particularly in this country. This is a big act. I covered what sovereignty, I did a piece, I think it was in November or early December, what sovereignty means for this country. It changes everything. Well, you can't change everything overnight. It does take time. Maybe if they used the people of the trust in more positions, then things would move a lot quicker than the government wheels, so to speak. But then the government's dealing with a lot of clowns as well, and lobbyists and core pirates and dragon groups and all kinds of other factions, and it does take time, but you can see the progress. We are making progress. Their desperation shows it all. So perhaps this is a fitting tune to play following that. Hi all and welcome back. Right, into the intel we go. Now, on Monday, the early Monday morning, as they started hacking the quantum system, and because it failed again, the Rothschilds threatened to shut down the whole American banking system. I don't know whether those clowns realised it was a bank holiday here anyway, so they were closed anyway. But this is kind of what's going on now. They're making extensive threats on America's infrastructure, its energy systems, and also its banks, which is what we've been telling people for a long, long time now. And essentially the deep state is burning. There's no question of that now. Their threats to shut down the financial system has failed again. So now they're doing their other business of trying to break us, which includes messing with phones, the internet, banking online, ATMs, false flag shootings that make no sense. Yes, Florida again. Fake gas leaks or over-pressurized gas systems, and threatening various other countries. But what they underestimate is the American people and the people all around the world that are the drivers of this movement. And like all else that they do, it will ultimately fail. Kim is working with several countries in Africa with teaching lessons about the control structure, about how banking works, about who's who, and the role of the IMF, the UN, and various other things. And also how we intend to facilitate the improvements on infrastructure, developments, projects, people's life improvements, and the return of each country's assets that were stolen by Kim's predecessor. Now, once it's safe to return those assets, and they have proved they can protect those assets, all of those assets will go back to the relevant country and the people of origin. Now, I will not give out details of which countries we are speaking to or the details of their assets, as this immediately rolls out UN mercenaries, publicly known as peacekeepers. Peacekeepers, they are not. It's an illusion. Unless you spell peace, P-I-E-C-E, as we'll take a piece of this and we'll take a piece of that, then you'll understand what those people really are about. Now, the IMF thugs or rogue elements within those countries then attack them the minute we mention that we're in contact with any country or any country's president or prime minister, a bit like Zimbabwe and the Congo recently. So the message to the African people is it's time to support each other. Forget the old wars and all that, as they created them. You were all lied to again, the same as everybody else. And bandy together and throw these clans out. The UN, the IMF, none of them are real anymore. It's an illusion perpetrated by the Rothschilds. Both of them are bankrupt. Both of them are not sovereign anymore and have no authority. Throw them out. Throw their Rothschilds-led Citibank out of Africa also. Citibank in Africa is essentially like the Federal Reserve in America or the Bank of England for all African countries. Throw them out. Create your own national banks and your own treasuries. You don't need these people. So all the assets around the world are mapped and also recorded. So there are no ifs or buts of who or where it belongs to anymore. And the turmoil that has been going on in Africa currently is directly related to the Manor World Holding Trust interjection there. Next item. Clowns are threatening the Vietnam government this week that if they don't revalue their currency at 3 to the dollar now, the threat is they will not be included when the RV happens. That's not much of a threat, that to me, but it's never happening anyway, regardless of what clowns on the alt media think, or the Rothschilds for that matter. But this is to make people globally aware of how these clowns work. The countries that are close to Vietnam need to support them. You need to support each other, like in Africa, like the various countries being attacked by Wells Fargo in South America. Throw them out. All of them are defunct. Now, the bots that were installed into the banking system, we mentioned recently in a show, have now all been removed. And that is another hurdle out of the way, another lesson learned. Thank you to the cabal for that. And eventually they will run out of options. There is an end of their hurdles and blocks. And eventually we will overcome that hurdle, and all the funds will be released and delivered, whether they like it or they don't. And doesn't require Mr. Trump's approval or anybody else's. This could have been a news item, but I will go in the intel because of my opinion on it. There's two competing measures or bills to end the partial US government shutdown fell short in the Senate today, as lawmakers explored an option to end a month-long impasse with the White House and to fund government operations for 3 weeks while talks continue. Now, a bill backed by Donald Trump to end the shutdown by funding the wall he wants to build on the US-Mexico border, and a separate bill supported by the Democrats to reopen shuttered agencies without such funding did not get the votes required to advance in the 100-member chamber. No surprise there. But the significance of what the media people will not report is in the Democrat bill, believe it or not, there is a disaster relief fund bill. You can't make this shit up. For those that you are new, it was Hillary Clinton, or the entity known as Hillary Clinton, Steve Mnuchin of the Treasury, and mercenary thugs out of Citadel, New York, that blocked an $105 billion disaster relief fund that the trust gave to Trump. The Democrats, and they have the cheek to throw in a disaster relief fund bill. The reason they've put it in is because the original $105 billion bill that we worked on and sent to Trump for his approval, which he did, and gave approval to the Treasury to release the cards, which then get loaded by Kim to the tune of $105 billion. The reason they've put it in and blocked the original is because their lobbyist corporations were not involved in it, likes of Home Depot and Lowe's, who were doing dodgy deals to the tunes of hundreds of millions with FEMA. This is what they're playing at. That's why the people of Florida, Georgia, Alabama, North and South Carolina and California are still waiting for their homes to be rebuilt and the roads to be fixed, etc., etc., because the Trust Disaster Relief Fund cut out the rogue criminal organisations that have been making tens of millions, if not billions, off the American people on disaster relief, and none of it was being spent on the people. Whole invoices of, for argument's sake, they would order 4,000 generators. The generators would get sent, And instead of the generators being, for argument's sake, $1,000 each, Home Depot and Lowe's were charging $2,000. They all got dropped off. All the cronies raided the generators, and then they used one or two. And then the ones that were left got sent back to Home Depot or Lowe's. And then there was another disaster, and then they bought the whole same lot again. That's what's been going on. So Mr. Trump may not say this due to blocks and the clowns around him, but I will. But he also needs to call out things more in the media than he is currently. He should turn around and say exactly what I've just said. These are the same people, the same Democrats that blocked the disaster relief fund sent by the trust to provide money for their cronies. He needs to tell the public about the disaster relief block and who did it, and stop allowing the media to run the narrative. We said we were going to be outing a couple of people. I don't like doing this. Then some people just don't know when to stop. But Cobra mentioned the term Annabelle in his recent blog. That was the final straw for me. And it is indicative of the Cobra since November 2016. People will remember, or may remember, me mention it in December of 2016. I felt that this Cobra was different. That was your hint. Now, Annabelle is one of the cabal financial systems that they've been trying to implement to replace the quantum system held by the trust. The fact that Cobra thinks it's something positive is indicative of where he's at now. The Annabelle system is cabal, like the Hercules, like the Prometheus system, like the Babylon system 1 through 6 that they keep trying to overtake the quantum system. They all failed. It's all very disappointing to me, but I warned of this. Like I said, in December 2016 there was a change in Cobra once he linked up with the Red Dragon and the Blue Chicken cult. Those of you with long memories will remember Cobra was the only one outside of myself and to a degree Randy Morgan's who was calling the Blue Chicken cult out. And all of a sudden that gets forgotten. Well, not by me, it doesn't. But the writing was on the wall then. Now, for those who don't know, I have personally spoken to Cobra 3 times and know who he is or who he was. Maybe that's an indicator. All very frustrating. We also worked out that some of the codes are the hacking systems when the cabal are rolling out the RV. So it's not just a mention of Annabelle either. We have watched the blog over many, many months, and Cobra's announcements with all those codes coincide with every hacking attempt the cabal are making on the quantum system. Every time. Jesper Ellerman, next intel, of the Kingdom of Mana, which was formerly linked with the Mana World Holding Trust until certain things took place, is currently running around South Africa and other African countries threatening all and sundry not to work with the Mana World Holding Trust and to wait for his paymaster's payout from the Rothschilds via the RV. People have no idea how gridlocked the financial system is now, because so many are waiting for this RV. That will never, ever take place. They're hampering everyone globally. The whole financial system has ground to a halt. Now, Jesper believes he can get into the quantum system and work his codes and deliver the trust to the Rothschilds. To date, he has failed 4 times already. He can try another 4,000 times and he'll fail every single one. But then the RV has failed over 1,500 times and some people still think it's valid. So, to the people of Africa who encounter Mr. Ellerman, chase him out. The guy has nothing valid to offer other than we'll deliver the RV, based on stealing assets that belong to all of the people that are held within the trust. They don't belong to Rothschilds or any other fake trustee. But the deeper questions come to light about Jesper Ellerman from a Danish newspaper dated 2004 and was updated in 2012. And one has to question Jesper Ellerman, or is it Peter Ellerman, or is it Jesper Peter Ellerman? There are 2 of them. As to how and why they are still allowed to run around Africa or anywhere else on this planet, never mind, following 2 separate convictions that has only recently come to light. One in 2000, after 3 cases of serious assault rape on foreign women, where in 2 cases he threatened them with a knife and in 1 case with a gun, to which he was sent to a psychiatric facility only to get out and commit another rape of a 14-year-old girl in 2004. He then got an affidavit indefinitely for him to be held at a psychiatric hospital for his leadership role in the Java Band group rape of the 14-year-old girl. This is why the trust or Kim will no longer have anything to do with him and cut him and the Kingdom of Mana crew off in the summer of 2017. He is working directly for the Rothschilds, and his paid role was to do everything to stop Kim and the trust getting out. We have all the evidence to support it. The question arises, who let him out? Not once, but twice. How did he get out of that facility? Twice. And why is Zuzanda still working for, with, and also protecting him? And he does know of his past, and he chooses to ignore it. This is a classic case of someone who took a plea bargain with the elites or with certain agency groups, like Neil Keenan did back in 1995, whereby they let you off prison time, but you go and work for them. An indefinite affidavit, and he gets out twice. But eventually your past always catches up with you, and generally you end up in more trouble than you started with. Jesper Peter Ellerman, Kingdom of Mana. Nothing to do with Mana World Holding Trust at all. Question of the day. What is humanitarian? Is a humanitarian someone who can only spend the Rothschilds-based funds, which no longer exist? or are they open to any funds being delivered for humanitarian projects? Now, a real humanitarian would be open to all sources of funding, would they not? Not where certain people apply, they don't. And the issue is here is Rothschilds and the term humanitarian are about as far apart as the next galaxy. The Rothschilds were one of the main trustees of the trust before Kim took over, and they delivered a sum total to humanity of $0. Nothing. The World Bank were given millions to do humanitarian projects, infrastructure and development for various countries. They spent nothing of it. And yet these people, with the likes of Gerard Rand, are all now talking about humanitarian programs. These people are not interested in humanitarian programs like the fake Chinese elders. Their role in the trust was to give an unknown family, a quite poor one at that, $20 million in 1520, 500 years ago, out of the trust to fund the Rothschilds' empire. Do you think that was humanitarian? Me neither. And yet we've got the whole of the internet, or large chunks of them, saying the Rothschilds are going to do this, we're going to have the RV, and it's all happening. You really think they're going to change the habit of a lifetime and give a single penny, never mind millions of dollars, to the people you really need to bang over the head with a large hammer? So we can also ignore David Rothschild, that clown off the internet, and his flagrant lying of I'm a humanitarian. My ass he is. Add Gerard Rand to that as well. We have spoken with both of them. Clowns, the two of them. For those of you who don't know, the Rand Corporation is run by the CIA. Oops. Next item before we have a music break. And it's to give people a heads up, because it's going to escalate, and we're going to cut it off tonight, because we're going to tell people the facts, not bullshit. Having failed in various attempts, including paying off alt media people to not have me or Kim on the show, and to diffuse or eliminate the existence of the Manor World Holding Trust, which failed following the Liberian news item back in early December, which they thought would be a negative, but it turned out was a positive for us. Well, they've now gone into let's discredit mode, either of the trust or Kim, and you're going to see lots of it all over the internet. They're sending their minions to look into her background and pull up anything they think they can get to stick. Leo Wanta was the first. I'll have more on him in this piece. But to be clear, because there's a lot of fun and games going on, as you will know by the end of this piece. 1. The Manor World Holding Trust does not have a blog or a website anywhere on the internet, which is no different to the previous trustee holder, and the only difference is now the public are getting to hear about it via this show and also Tanks. They're the only two avenues for the Manor World Holding Trust. No others. Number 2, Kim is not working for the Bushes, the latest BS, not working for MIT, previous BS, and is certainly not working for Langley either. 3, ignore all global references to the term manor. The Trust nor Kim are not connected to any other ventures or operations under the banner of Manor. Only the Manor World Holding Trust. There is no subsidiaries, unless you count the People's Club and Create Change. 4. Kim's name comes up on a poorly written, non-detailed, almost childlike report from 5 years ago citing she was involved in a rip-off. This coincides with her taking over the Trust. Bizarrely, that site that it's on, the rip-off report, cannot be removed or adjusted to amend updated details. Despite the reporter offering zero evidence of their bogus support claims, as there was no rip-off. Go and check it out for yourself. It's indicative that that site can't be taken down. 5. That site is operated out of New York, I might add. 5. Beware when the Trust is rolled out of false claims that it's Rothschild's money or the RV/GCR. It's not. They've tried that game already, telling people the funds are coming last week. No, they didn't. If it was their money, people need to listen to this closely. If it was their money, they would have taken on the challenge Kim made directly to the Rothschilds, also to the Rothschilds' puppet Jesper Ellerman, formerly of the Kingdom of Manor, also directly to Leo Wonter on a phone call. I heard her personally state that. And also to Anna von Reitz and her band of former trustees, as she calls it. The challenge was to give Kim their codes and accounts they believe belongs to them, and if any funds are or were contained in those accounts that is supported by documented proof that it belongs to the recipient, Kim stated she will hand over all the funds or assets back to them. To date, none of them took up the challenge. I wonder why. You would think these people would be scrambling to get their alleged funds back. They all cry they are owed to them, and Kim stole it off them. Kim offered to give them all back when proof of funds could be provided, and yet none of them stepped forward to that challenge. Anna von Reitz was asked for the list of trustees she said is owed money from the trust. She refused to name them. How can you retain alleged funds with no names? Simple. The names she holds were all criminal elite bloodline families that stole out of the trust and not give to the people for hundreds, if not thousands of years. That's why, like her own family bloodline, the Habsburgs, amongst others. 6. Kim has not stolen any funds from anyone. She was appointed as the trustee, and what essentially she's done with the trust is changed its path from a harvesting venture to a retaining the funds and assets stolen from us all back to the rightful owners. 50% we the people, 50% to the countries. And for that, she's called every name under the sun by these harvesting agents of death. A bit like that hat piece at the beginning. It's a classic branding program. Where does the branding programme come from? Mainly the Council of Foreign Relations. They are known as a branding company. They are the main branding company for items, people, governments or policies. But you can brand things all you like. The real issue is people fall for it with no evidence of why they're doing so. That is insanity. Let's write a bogus rip-off report on a site that can't be taken down, which should tell you who that site belongs to. Hello, Langley. And label a person a fraud, but provide no evidence of what fraud took place. And people just accept that. We have to think better than that. 7. Kim, nor I, nor any members of the team have received any payouts of any description from the Trust to date. None. I'm sure most agree we should have been paid for the extensive amount of work that has been done on behalf of the Trust, and in particular Kim. 16, 18 hours a day for zero pay for the last 4 years. But due to the blocks to bank accounts for members of the public or anyone connected with the Trust, none of us can receive any funds as it stands. But it won't always be the case. 8. There is only one Kim and one trustee. She is both. The real one. So all the copies of Kim that are running around Africa and other countries are not the real Kim Jong-un. They're not the real trustee. Chase them out. She is here in America and will remain here until conditions improve for her to travel again. I hope that clears a lot of things up. And we'll have a music break and we'll be back with more pieces, including a detailed report of the Yellow Vest movement written on the ground. Hi all and welcome back to the final portion of tonight's show. This next piece was written by Alistair from Holland, or the Netherlands, whichever you prefer. And it's based on an on-the-ground report in France of what's been going on with the violence and the injuries to the Yellow Vest movement. And essentially, France is on the verge of civil war or a military coup, and the Yellow Vest movement is making momentum as a worldwide protest against the globalists, the oppression, and also the exploitation of the people. In Europe, there have been protests in France, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Finland, Germany, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Holland, Portugal, Serbia, Spain, United Kingdom, and Turkey, as well as various other countries outside of Europe like Canada and also Australia. In France, the Yellow Vest movement is huge. Every week, hundreds of thousands of people march the street, and on January 19th, last week, it was the 10th week of protests. Demonstrations took place in more than 50 major cities throughout France and thousands of manifestations. The mainstream propaganda media lies about the number of participants. They claim that in the past weeks throughout France, 84,000 people participated. This is a blatant lie, as the police admitted they had mobilised 80,000 police officers for the Yellow Vest protests. And according to the French Police Syndicate of Angry Police Officers, SFP, in the past 2 weeks there's been an average of 55,000 demonstrators each week. Extreme police violence and disproportionate weapons is the next part. The mainstream propaganda media suggests that the demonstrators are violent and the police therefore need to defend themselves with heavy armour and weaponry. The truth is that the protesters are primarily peaceful and unarmed, where the police forces exhibit extreme violence against the people. The police forces are often the aggressors, and there have been many reports that they deliberately escalate a peaceful demonstration by attacking the crowd with tear gas and also water cannons. Also, reports of them throwing hand grenades or shooting with LBD 40 guns, known as the flashball gun. The injuries caused by these LBD 40 guns, the newer model, or flashball guns, the older model, are compatible with war injuries one sees on a battlefield. The mainstream media uses the euphemism rubber bullet or ball of defence, but this projectile that is fired at 100 metres per second causes very serious injuries, mutilations of the face, skull fractures, brain injuries and internal bleedings. There have been more than 100 severely injured casualties and at least 10 deaths. The French police union SFP confirms that primarily the innocent bystanders are hit by this weapon and not the rebels and the troublemakers. A few examples of the casualties of police violence on French TV: a 19-year-old girl spoke about how a flashball fractured her jaw. She had to have 3 surgeries and since has a major scar on the side of her mouth. Additional surgeries will be required in order to repair the damage. In the same TV show, Antoine Boudinette, a young guy, told the reporter how he lost his hand after the CRS police, military police, had thrown a hand grenade into the crowd. His right hand was amputated. Several protesters lost their hands also, and at least 15 people lost their eye as a result of being hit by the flashball. One of the victims is a 15-year-old girl. Several videos shot from different angles show how Olivier Bezier was fleeing from a tear gas attack and chased by a squad of CRS military police. He ran into a quiet shopping street and was of no threat to the police, and he was shot by a flashball, hit him in the head, and he fell unconscious flat on his face. He is still in a coma. He suffers a cerebral hemorrhage, and it is unclear whether he will ever recover. He is a father of 3 children and worked as a volunteer at the local fire brigade. He is one of many with severe brain injuries that are in a coma currently. You can check out the many videos yourself on the Twitter account of twitter.com. I'll have to spell that out. NIEMANDSKNEGT. Or you can go to the French journalist twitter.com/davduf, DAVDUF. The Ombudsman and medical specialists demand a ban on flashball guns is the next section. These are just a few examples of the innocent victims that have suffered unacceptable injuries as a result of a disproportionate police violence. They are permanently scarred for life. There are hundreds of these stories, and the journalist David Dufresne meticulously collects the statistics about these injuries. When he presented his results in a French TV show, he broke down in tears. Throughout France, special interest groups and medical specialists such as plastic surgeons, specialised in facial transplantations, have now demanded a ban on these weapons altogether. Amnesty International already wrote a letter to the French Minister of Internal Affairs back in 2002 to refrain from using flashball guns. The Minister almost immediately ignored this advice. In 2015, also the Defender of Rights called for a ban on this type of guns, given the serious injuries these weapons can cause, also for bystanders. Next section, pressure within the police department. Several police unions raised questions about the orders from higher-ups, commanding to shoot with the LBD-40 guns. But the pressure among the police is enormous, and there is little to no room for critical questions or disobedience. The suicide level is skyrocketing. Already 7 police officers committed suicide in the first 3 weeks of this year. Many officers call in sick, and many are on the verge of a burnout, especially since they've been having to work long working days, 6 days a week, under extreme pressure from both sides of the conflict. The police union SFP wrote an open letter to President Macron to renounce the violence and his orders to attack, but Macron and his ministers won't budge. Macron tries to even escalate the situation by setting up different groups against each other, all very familiar, and it looks like they are trying to create as many injuries as possible to set an example. This is a form of state terrorism. In a way, it would be best if the police would call in sick en masse. Exactly. She said this with the NYPD and the Hillary Anabuma Let's Skin a Child's Face video. So the government and the control system will lose this layer of protection. Yet there are other violent groups that have received helmets and LBD-40 flashball guns or even iron bars. They are not part of the irregular police, as they are often not wearing a uniform. They are chasing people down the streets like vicious bloodhounds to attack anyone with a yellow vest, and it is unclear whether they are part of La BAC, or BAC, La Brigade Anti-Criminalite, or a group of mercenaries. I would suggest the latter. They are wearing masks because they're cowards, and nobody knows where they came from, who they are, and if they are even French to begin with. These groups are extremely violent and try to cause as much damage as possible. This is what happened in the Lavoie-Finicum case. French mercenaries, remember, were the ones that were causing the violence, and possibly the ones that shot Lavoie-Finicum also. Nothing to do with the police. French mercenaries, same people, probably related to the Blackwater group and Eric Prince, or something similar anyway. The victims are not necessarily standing on the front line either. People are chased in the streets by police squads and mercenaries, and even attacked while waiting for the bus to go home. They're also attacking women and children. There are several videos of a single woman being attacked by a dozen heavily armoured military police officers and beaten to a pulp. Even first aid volunteers and the press are attacked by either the CRS, police, La BAC, or one of these mercenary groups. This is clearly against the Geneva Convention. Next section, France is reaching the breaking point. Thousands of demonstrators have been arrested, including a 13-year-old girl, and their only felony was that they demonstrated without permission to protest, or being outside of the restricted zone. When the people need permission to protest or voice their opinion, this is a clear sign there is no real democracy. The French people are waking up en masse to the harsh reality of the oppressive control structure that will clearly go to any length to protect the system. I think we are getting close to the point where the elastic band in France will snap. Yes, indeed. I think there is a likely scenario that the military will step in when Macron decides to use live ammunition, and there are reports of CRS police seen with semi-automatic weaponry. There are unconfirmed reports that these weapons were actually used during Saturday's protest on January the 19th, On December the 7th, 2018, a number of French generals wrote an open letter to Macron when he signed the Marrakesh Treaty and accused him from treason and betrayal of the French people. A military coup is certainly a realistic scenario that could play out, given the serious situation France is in, and the Yellow Vest movement is no longer just a protest against eco-tax, the increase of living costs or political positions. It is an outright revolt against the government. Macron and his stooges need to go. He does not seem to understand his position, has become untenable by allowing this type of violence in a desperate attempt to hold his position, and whatever happens next, it will be hopefully cleared away for a new political system of true democracy. I'm told that whole piece was written by Alistair, and we thank him for that, for giving us that update. We will highlight certain things in shows. I have another similar piece ready for next week's show, but there was too much in this show to add another piece in that came in today. But to add to what Ella stated in that piece, the Yellow Vest movement, she said there was various places, there's been more added, and it's now in France, Taiwan, UK, Canada, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Egypt, Finland, Germany, Iraq, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Holland, Pakistan, Poland, Portugal, Russia, Serbia, Tunisia, Australia and New Zealand. The question is, where's the Yellow Vest in America? The world's standing up. This is what we've waited for. And yes, they'll use violence and all kinds of media bullshit spin. But if no one listens to the media, they speak to nobody. That's the key. Shut down the media. Find out where they live. Tell them we don't want you in on your lies and spin, committing treason against the people and the country in our community. You don't have to use violence. In fact, I'm stressing we use no violence. All the gains that the trusts made and the banking and all kinds of other things with the taxes and the sovereignty, no one was killed. You don't have to kill people. You don't have to injure or harm people. You just have to not comply. The peoples around the world are rising up. Support them. Ignore clowns who think hats are frightening. Tell them to go back to sleep. Support the people in your country. Support the people in every other country. This is the path forward. Op-ed piece. Something to ponder. It's not fact. The next two pieces are something to ponder on. The Indians, as they're called, Native Americans is the more common term now. And in light of this so-called fake staged attack on native people by so-called Trump supporters this week, all theatre, divide and conquer. Tyler Durden, who does numbers of good pieces on Zero Hedge, did another one this week that covers that, about the fake attacks and who are Trump supporters and who are really not. And it got me thinking, The From Russia with Love series I did, I mentioned the sub-grey peoples, essentially the modern day Jewish peoples. That was the term for them. It's not derogatory, that was the name. Who were cast out of the original Garden of Eden, which is in India. It's been proven scientifically that the Garden of Eden, the original Garden of Eden, was in India. And they were exiled to the land of the false mountains, which is now known as Egypt. So they all went west out of the Garden of Eden around 5,000 years ago. Now those peoples in India who were worshipping the Dark Mother, the Kali Ma, at that time 5,000 years ago, were all black. And I mean jet black, just to determine the differences of colour. Those were the people out of Africa, the migration, and a subsequent mixing of people of southern Russia, mainly white, that enabled the lighter black skins, or the brown skin colouring that is more popular now in India, and a new colour they deemed at the time, and it was listed in the Vedic texts, which are not Indian, they are Russian, the Rus and the Slavic Aryan texts, as the sub-grey people, known as the Khazarians. Now it took them 200 years to get from India to Egypt, as they tried to integrate in the various southern Rus regions, Kazakhstan, etc., and were subsequently thrown out of every one. But the question to ponder on is, what if some of them went east, not west, as in northeast to be precise, and across the land bridge that existed into Alaska, through modern day Canada and into North America? What if the term Indians is a real depiction? They were from India. Now if it's correct, the ancestors of Native Americans were the Kali Ma worshippers that were situated in the original Garden of Eden by the Ganges. If correct, this explains the various colours of the different tribes that are now based in North America, and it's something that people should ponder on. At this stage, it's a theory only. Next piece to ponder on. I had a discussion with one of our members about gematria this week, and it's a code, and does it predict? It predicts stuff, or some people say anyway. And some people like to point to gematria as some sort of mystic guide to determine the future and various other connections. And I've also been told some use it to bet on things, and I've had some success. But people don't ask, where did this code originate? Who put it together? And who presented it to the public, and why? We appear to know little of those answers to those questions, and a Google search is pretty pointless. It's about as valid as the Snopes.com site. But it brings up the following descriptions. Gematria originated as an Assyro-Babylonian Greek system of alphanumeric code or cipher that was later adopted into the Jewish culture. A Hebrew numerological system used in Kabbalah and other forms of Jewish mysticism that assigns numerical values to words based on the fixed numerical values of their letters. Did it come from the Hebrew? Now, my impression is that Hebrew and Kabbalah was introduced by the Anunnaki. So from that perspective alone, it raises some issues of what its real intention is. But what if this code is an ancient AI read script of all the previous loops? If that's the case, of course, all the predictions will come true, as it's based on the repeat movies of the previous 5 loops. And how that worked, everything that happened in loop 1 was repeated in the subsequent loops of time afterwards, with minor adjustments for more control. And this is where Org Tellus fell short. His narrative is all based on the previous 5 loops, except they weren't even in sequence. It's like it was put in a spin cycle and then all randomly spat out. It didn't, and he didn't make sense, as this loop ends that repeat movie cycle. It's not going to be the same. Now, for those who are new, we were trapped into a Mobius loop that lasted 13,000 years per loop. That has lasted the last 78,000 years, trapped in a system. Now this loop has ended, or about to end, depending on whose opinion you listen to. But we are no longer trapped in a Groundhog Day style system anymore. Things will change. But if you envision the Mobius loop, essentially it's 2 frequencies, waves overlapped, and the 2 of them come together at the joint of the loop, or the figure 8. With that disconnect at the junction of the figure 8, one wave will carry on its own, and the other will carry on its own also. They will no longer interject. One frequency is organic and one frequency is inorganic. This is the part of the 2 worlds theory that is mentioned in this show frequently. Their world and ours. And they will get further apart as time moves on. For those new, again, and a refresher for regular listeners, Randy Morgans did a rather good small presentation of it on Off Planet Radio this week, so you can go and check that out. And it's the reality of the full control structure that has at best only revealed to the public around 25% of the whole structure. No one went above it. This would include your Bilderbergers, your CFR, the IMF, the UN, the secret societies, the former Illuminati, which ended a decade ago. It's now the factions, the military and the politicians who are in the bottom 1% of the system. It also includes the dragon groups, and they all came under the 301 families, bloodline families, not the 13 or the 26 families known on the internet. 301. Essentially, all of these groups we think of that are top of the tree or top of the pyramid are actually the bottom of the system, and they were not as important as they all thought, or we for that matter. These groups were the harvesters, which was then collected higher up the chain and then moved into the trust that was owned by Marduk. Those above the families were collectors of the harvest and also the protectors of those within the four-wheeled circle, which you can see quite clearly on the piece Randy did, and also the picture that we posted on MeWe. A vast control system beyond the comprehension of all on this planet, and I mean all. No matter how high up the chain they all thought they were, the reality is far different, and getting that across to them has been an arduous task in most cases. But Kim and this show has been getting through to many over the past 2.5 years, and more of the minions are going neutral. Not necessarily our friends, but no longer playing the game for those who think they are at the top, but in reality are or were nowhere near it. With most of the four wheels, which is the top of the system, now collapsed and the main controller Marduk now gone, the harvester minions think they are now the new controllers. Well, they can think what they like. We know different. As their businesses, banking, media, government's empire of control all collapse in around them, which is ongoing, more of their minions will walk away. There is only one copy of that control system, and very few people have even seen it or known of that document's existence. I had the pleasure of studying the only copy of it in detail last year to work out the final pieces of it, of who is what, where, when and why. And between Kim and I, plus some valuable input from Shane, we were finally able to work out the whole structure in its entirety. The task we have now is teaching the other 7.5 billion people of what was going on, including all your presidents and prime ministers and tracking groups who all thought they were the B's and E's, and your Rothschilds et al. No idea whatsoever. None. And that will all take place in due course. 16,500 years of building and tweaking that structure into a full-on harvesting program has been smashed into something unrecognisable from the original in barely a decade. Real history will judge that as a remarkable event in years to come. Final piece. The cabal are now in full panic and crazy mode now. There's no getting away with it. And we all should be ultra vigilant, particularly around energy plants, be it oil, gas or whatever, and also pipelines. They are trying to shut this country down in every way possible currently, and you have to do your utmost to prevent it by standing strong in the face of such evil. It should matter not whether you like Trump or not, whether you are Republican, Democrat, Liberal or some other banal branch of politics. Politics are not what is at stake here. It is your very freedom and way of life they are intent on destroying. We the people are what counts. If you're marching for blacks only, women only, natives only, anti-immigrant or some other one-sided movement, you are part of the problem, all of you. March for all the people. Until you realise all lives matter, you are part of the problem the system created for you, and you went along with it. Trump or other presidents before him never made the policies. They just passed the message forward to you from the system, and you ran with it. We have to be a lot more clever than that going forward. Should we blindly trust Mr. Trump? No. He's still in the system. In my opinion, based on my interactions and the team's interactions with him, with our help, he is breaking down the system to allow the people to have a say in things again. Look at the bills that have gone in for voting, that the Trust and the team played a large part in. The Sovereignty Act, the tax reform, the disaster relief programme. None of them came from the politicians, it came from the people via the Trust. And Mr. Trump ran with them. Now, whether you like Trump or not, that is a significant change in policy from all previous presidencies, is it not? This is not about personalities or image. That is all part of the old system. This is about people making change, real change. And as long as Mr. Trump is doing more right than wrong, this show will be supporting him in his endeavours. But with caution. Not because of Mr. Trump, but because of the nest of vipers around him that coerce, threaten and abuse the man. It can all be so easy to buckle to their demands under that type of pressure. So far, he hasn't. To the people who point to the US invasions in various countries as evidence Trump has lost the plot, not one of those invasions were implemented by Mr. Trump. All of them by the people who really ran this country, the Rothschilds, the Deep State, the Dragon Groups and the various rogue agencies. They are your target of ire, not politicians per se. They're doing everything now to shut us up. Police thugs attacking yellow vest movement people, police thugs attacking young children protesting outside of a school, jailing Ben Gilroy and Brian McCarthy in Ireland, to name but a few. Why? Because they're shitting themselves, quite frankly. That we, the people, are now rising up. They wish to shut us up, but we will shout louder. They wish to knock us down, but we will stand up and stand our ground. They use violence to shut us up. We will use peace and non-conformity in return. Remember, these people are not all powerful. They never were. It's all an illusion. Only our energy gave them power. Only cowards control other people. Why? Because they fear us. It's the top and bottom line of it. The key is what we do, not what they do. Do we cower in fear? Do we play divide and conquer games? Do we dance at the behest of the Luciferian satanic clowns? Or do we stand up and fight for all people of the world? And rest assured, this show, OYM and Off Planet Radio, along with the Trust, will back you all the way. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.